Series 8's finale, Dark Water, definitely pushed the limits when it comes to age restrictions with its more mature and dark themes, with a focus on death as a whole, but also how terrible the experience can truly be, with people still feeling the pain their body goes through even after the fact. Although many younger viewers may dislike this episode, there is plenty to enjoy from Missy, Unit, and the Cybermen. In this video, I'll be re-exploring part 1 to Peter Capaldi's first ever series finale, and discussing what did and didn't work. Without wasting any more time, let's dive straight into this breakdown of the episode Dark Water. This episode opens up with Clara phoning Danny to finally reveal the truth of her travels with the 12th Doctor, whilst also confessing her love for him. Danny is suddenly killed by a passing by car midway through this phone call. Now, in my personal opinion, this introduction did feel very forced, and having Danny die instantly, it just didn't feel right. This episode takes place almost directly after In the Forest of the Night, and I just think it would have been so much better if you shoved this part of the episode at the end of that one. I mean, not only would it have made for probably one of the best teasers for another episode, but it would also kind of give you time to digest what happens. I fully understand how the show is episodic, so they might not want to do this, but I feel like in this scenario, it does kind of work. I honestly would just prefer this because when I watch this episode, it's quite jarring at how quick it happens, and I almost cannot process that he dies. The pace of the intro in this episode is just way too quick, and Clara's change of persona just doesn't feel natural because of that. I feel like having that in the last episode would just make the transition between these two emotions a bit more gradual, and it would just flow better. Clara, being extremely upset at this point, plans to use a hypnotic patch on the Doctor to try and trick him and manipulate him into bringing Danny back from the dead. She does so by stealing every single TARDIS key she knows the location of and taking her and the Doctor to a volcano, where she throws each one off into the lava one by one until she finally gets an answer that she wants, which she never actually gets, leading to every single key being disposed of. The Doctor then reveals that the patch didn't work on him and that he actually used it on her instead to see how far she will go and why she is actually upset. Despite her betrayal of him, the Doctor still tries to help her bring back Danny. Now, there's no question about it in this episode that they handle Clara's grief really well. I absolutely love the scene with Clara on the volcano. I think it demonstrates her love for Danny really well, and it just shows how important he is to her. But I also think this shows her true expectations of the Doctor and how she thinks that he should help her no matter what. His small speech on betrayal afterwards as well is just perfect.
Do you think I care for you so little that betraying me would make a difference?
I feel like a complaint many people have is that this feels out of character for Clara, but I actually don't think it does. I mean, she knows how smart he actually is and how he can solve even the hardest of problems, and her confidence mixed with her controlling nature probably just made something go on in her brain where she was like, I can get this to work. I won't lie, I'm a sucker for great acting and emotion, and this introductory sequence just has all of that. So although every detail about it is not perfect, I still just love it, and it's so enjoyable to watch. To find Danny, Clara uses the TARDIS's telepathic interface, which was also seen in the episode Listen. The Doctor and Clara then arrive at a mausoleum called the 3W Institute, which holds several tanks of human skeletons submerged in a liquid called dark water. This dark water hiding the exoskeletons supporting them. Much like Spider-Man No Way Home, for those that have seen it, this episode doesn't really have a good gateway into the story, but I do like the story they're setting up. I just personally can't believe the Doctor's first instinct to save Danny is thinking an afterlife exists and finding him that way.
You asked me what we're going to do. I told you. We're going to hell.
And in all honesty, I am shocked he even thinks that's possible. He could have potentially said this to her to just give her hope, but it does feel a bit forced for the story. Coincidentally, the afterlife just so happens to exist right now as well because of Missy, which just makes this annoy me a little bit more. It just works too well and all just feels like one massive coincidence. At the 3W Institute, they are then greeted by Missy, who we do not know is Missy currently, but she does introduce herself as a welcome droid. The scientist Dr. Chang explains that the 3W Institute was founded to protect the dead, after voices heard within white noise broadcast signals made it seem that the dead were aware of their bodies being cremated. I actually do like this premise, and for someone who loves the continuity of things, I can make it make sense by thinking that Missy removes their consciousness out of their body at the instant before they die.
I'm Missy. You made it.
Which to me then makes sense how they feel things, because their mind will still be alive and tethered to their body somehow, but just in a different place. It is a very horrible and disturbing idea though at the exact same time. And the thought of it is so unsettling. After seeing how horrible it is to be converted into a Cyberman from previous seasons, just again, the idea of this happening while everyone feels it, it's horrible, and I can't believe that it's in this show, primarily aimed at a younger audience. Also, returning their consciousness to the bodies after it's been converted is just a flaw in the plan. It makes zero sense to me. I mean, it makes sense then why Danny can still think and feel in the next episode, but how did someone like the Master not think of that? During all of this, Danny is greeted by a guy called Seb in the apparent afterlife called the Nether Sphere, and he helps Danny adjust to his recent death. As part of his orientation, a meeting was set up with Danny and a young civilian boy whom he accidentally killed while he was a soldier in Afghanistan. The boy then runs away out of fear, and Danny receives a phone call from Clara at 3W. While Clara takes this phone call, the Doctor and Chang leave to investigate further. I must quickly mention that at this point, they subtly hinted towards the Cybermen using the doors of the elevator. And although this may seem like an obvious detail to many, I think it's a great detail, which I actually didn't notice on my first watch. Afterwards, it's very obvious, but I love it nonetheless. Not wanting Clara to die, Danny does not convince her that he is actually Danny, and instead tricks her into ending the call. Danny then contemplates deleting his emotions, but then hesitates when seeing the young boy stare at him. Now, Danny in this is actually amazing. If you've seen any of my other videos, you will know my opinions on Danny. They have definitely changed on my most recent rewatch. When I first watched this show, I didn't like him at all, but now I truly love his character and what he does in this season. Now, his acting is still hit or miss for me, I'm not gonna lie, but his sacrifice in this is so good. I honestly think it's kind of underrated. It's a very unnoticed sacrifice, but it's so meaningful. He knows that if he proves to Clara that he is actually him, that she might literally off herself.
If that is you, wherever you are, whatever it takes, I will be with you again, I swear.
No, you won't. You're not coming here.
After hearing the truth about the Nether Sphere, he obviously does not want that to happen to her, even if it will cause him to suffer more. It's genuinely tragic, and I feel so bad for him. From what we have seen, he is nothing but a great guy, and it just makes it even more of a gut punch with his death and how he ends up, considering like none of it is deserved. He just gets caught in a really terrible and accidental situation, and it sucks. Missy then proceeds to drain the tanks, revealing the skeletons. She then kills Chang, and the Cybermen are revealed. Missy tells the Doctor that all dying minds are uploaded to the Nether Sphere in this sort of afterlife, and he then realizes that she might not be a welcome droid, but instead a Time Lady, because the technology used for the Nether Sphere is from the Time Lords. He then races out of the 3W, discovering its location is within St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Missy then reveals herself as a female incarnation of the Master. Whilst this is going on, Clara is getting trapped within Dr. Chang's laboratory with a Cyberman, leaving this episode on one hell of a cliffhanger. Sadly, this episode is very clearly a part 1. Besides the opening scene, it gets all the boring stuff out of the way first, just to allow all the fun stuff to be in the second part. Like, we spend about 30 minutes in the same building, in the same 2 rooms, where it's very dialogue driven. I personally don't find it too boring, but it's definitely a slower paced episode than most people were probably expecting. When watching this as a 2-parter, I think it does work really well. The build up is executed well, and it does actually get you excited for the next part. I think it just doesn't work as well on its own, like Bad Wolf or Heaven Sent. There are many great moments in this though, like obviously the Missy reveal, you have Danny's further character development, and that intro sequence I discussed earlier, which for me makes for quite an enjoyable watch regardless. Which, like I said, only gets amplified when watching in conjunction with Death in Heaven. Unfortunately, that is all I have to say, but hopefully you enjoyed seeing my perspective on this story. I would love to know yours though, so make sure you comment down below your thoughts. If you have made it this far though, I'm almost certain when I say you probably love Doctor Who, so why not check out my other video on Mummy on the Orient Express. I'm positive you will like it as much as this, and thank you for watching.